Is this thing on? So the next question I have is, what do you believe about the people who voted opposite of you? And this might be an interesting question since you didn't vote, but I'm curious
Mhm.
what your answer to that would be.
I have love for them because whatever they're going through, everybody lives in their own reality and their own perspective. So, whatever they're going through, whatever fears they're experiencing, I just want to send them love because maybe that's what they're missing.
Yeah.
A lot of the times when we're living in scarcity, we're lacking love for ourselves. I know it's very cliche, but that is the greatest thing to be is to be in love, in the state of love.
I agree. And I love that you said that because I believe that as well. Everybody is here for their own individual reason,
Yeah,
right? Their purpose, whether they find it or not. And everybody who is existent in this world deserves peace, love, and joy, right? Love being
absolutely.
one of the most important ones, right? And so I love that. And I also try to not demonize people because a lot of folks that, I
Exactly.
have on my timeline, and they're having snarky remarks and wanting to demonize folks and like everybody's racist. And I'm like, but while I've done work in social justice and I know the levels of racism that exist, sociologically as well as psychologically, I
Mhm.
do not believe that the majority of people in this country hate people of color or hate different cultures.
I
And,
agree.
but I do believe that everybody in this country cares about how much eggs cost or how much their housing costs or that they're getting a paycheck to pay for anything, right?
Yes,
And so
exactly.
I found comfort in believing that there's economic issues. Of course, there was also safety issues, which the red side was very clear about around immigration and whatnot. But to believe that everybody is racist, I just don't want to.
And it's difficult for me to understand that role of people fearing others coming into the country because I live in a community where I help my mother's business, a little mom and pop grocery store here in Milan, and our biggest customers are migrant workers.
Right?
That is how we make money. So even though there's that, and I don't see my parent, they never, whenever they talk about why they chose Trump, that was never the rhetoric that they, or the things that they thought he promoted. That, and they would dismiss that. And those are because for them, we've never been that way. In fact, I grew up in a church that was Spanish speaking. Majority of the people there were Spanish speaking, and my parents were pastors there. So I grew up in a very diverse community. Even where we went to school is very diverse. And then over here in this small community, we still have that diversity and it's growing. But even with that diversity, there's a large number of people of different ethnicities that are not white that are voting for Trump because of economic hardship. And we do experience it here. And I have to say, like an argument I hear a lot from those of us who, and I wouldn't even count myself in because I'm looking at it from everybody's perspective. And I've lived in the city. I lived in Denver, I lived in Seattle area, and then I lived here. But they are afraid of not being able to purchase eggs. It's a bigger fear because there is a lot more scarcity in rural areas, especially ones that I live in that aren't heavily funded.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important because a lot of America is rural, right?
Yes,
And
more than
the,
we realize, I think.
that's right. And there are specific challenges that rural communities have that do not exist in urban communities. And that is the
Absolutely.
availability of resources, whether the resource is a nonprofit to help you with being a mother or getting services or whatever, or housing availability, or
Yeah.
even a grocery store, right? With different food options. Like rural communities,
Mhm.
a lot of times are self reliant
Yes,
to the degree that what they see in urban areas is completely counter to what they believe and what they think the American way of life should be. And so
exactly.
that's an excellent point.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, Being in a rural community, you mentioned that there are even people of color and different cultures who voted for Trump.
Mm.
Your point was you think it is an economic reason.
Yes, I
Okay.
think it is. I wouldn't say it's a large number, but there are some.
Sure.
Regardless, it's strange to me because I wouldn't have ever voted that way.
Yeah.
I would have never voted for him in any of his elections. So, yeah,
All right. So the next question I have for you is what is the worst thing about society to you?
lack of empathy really is. And lack of self love, actually, because that's where empathy stems from. And when we're in a constant state, and a lot of Americans, especially those who are just trying to feed their kids, they don't get a chance to sit with their thoughts. I'm one of the very few. They're always trying to find ways to care for their family.
Mhm.
So sitting down and actually having the time with ourselves and being able to love ourselves is something that's hard to do. And that's part of why our society here, like I look at how European countries, how they
Yep.
operate, and there's a lot more time to have freedom for yourself and to open your mind. You're not working 40 plus hours a week, constantly grinding, not usually, at least in a lot of the European countries. And then you watch how their children evolve and how much better they're doing because of the programs that they have set up. And America just doesn't have that yet. And I don't know if we have the capacity for some time to reach to those goals. But
That's an interesting point because in America, we certainly believe we are the best country in the world. And in many measures, we absolutely are. But,
it's, yeah,
but the point about that you're making about not only the time we have to care for ourselves, but the tools or the understanding or even the how do I do it to care for myself? You know what I mean? I feel like those things are by and large missing for many of us. And you being somebody who is not only spiritual, but understands mental health and self care, right?
yeah, yeah.
Did you know about these things when you were going through high school or grade school? Were they teaching you these things on how to take care of yourself? And
Absolutely not.
right.
I learned this from my girlfriends. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
this comes from communicating with my girls. Like,
Sure.
if actually, sure you remember her, Lime and I were like at the hip, and she's someone who taught me so much about beauty and taking care of myself. Um, where my mom lacked, but that's the whole part of community.
Yeah.
I actually have this really wonderful friend too. It was her birthday the other day, and she taught me a lot about being a woman and loving my body and accepting my body. Especially, I grew up as a fat kid, and I still am. Not that I think that there's anything wrong with that. I love my body, and I accept it. And a lot of people have a hard time with that, accepting themselves as they are. And she was the first person I ever met to teach me that. So
Those lessons are so impactful and they permeate every facet of our lives, right?
they do.
And you can also tell when somebody doesn't understand that about themselves, right?
Yes, it's pretty apparent. And I try to help in the ways that I can. But again, like perspective and people are in their own reality.
Yeah,
So you can only guide them as much as they are willing to listen.
that's right.
And that's the difficult thing about society.
That is very right. I love how my conversations with people like you and the other guests are illuminating pieces of society that I'm really hoping the podcast can really dive into
I
more depth
agree. I
because
feel like you're uncovering something magical right now. It's beautiful what you're
well,
doing.
two magical beings together can make a lot of
Oh, that's
damages,
right.
right? But no, and so I'm putting a pin in that because that is
Mhm.
that's something we want to return to in this podcast.
Yeah,
Is self love because if we live in a world where the majority of people don't even know how to value themselves on a spiritual, physical, emotional, mental level, and focus on validation from society who doesn't even really know them, then we have people who are either broken or are putting their power, their individual power being into things that might not be healthy for them.
absolutely. And sometimes they're just unconscious of it.
That's right. That's
because
right.
it's a pattern we keep repeating and repeating. And to get yourself out of the pattern, a lot of times it's a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
If it weren't for the experience I had, I don't know if I would have delved deeply in my spirituality. I grew up Christian and I had a lot of questions, and I married someone who was not. And I just like left spirituality for some time, but it never left me
Okay.
because the creator God never leaves you.
That's right. So, okay, let's go to the next question then. The
Sure.
next question is, what do you believe is one of the reasons that Trump and the largely Republic Congress was elected?
Like you discussed before, I really think that it is for the economy. That I think a huge fear is a lot of us whose grandparents went through the Great Depression. Even like my grandmother on my mom's side, she was homeless as a teenager and had to find ways to feed her family. And so she ended up getting married just so she could feed herself. And trauma stays in the body and with us for up to, I think, 7 generations is what they say now.
Yeah, I
So,
have heard that.
so we're all experiencing trauma that we may not even understand why we feel the way that we do, or we're voting the way we're voting because we're not questioning ourselves enough.
Right. And gosh, one of the things about this podcast for listeners is we don't focus on perfection, we focus on progress, right?
Right.
Part of the reason I say that is because that's how we get some organic, authentic answers from people. Right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
What you said is that trauma stays in the body for 7 generations. And
Mhm.
a level deeper is it stays in your DNA, right?
Yes, I'm sorry. That's what I meant to say. In your body and in your DNA. And when I
Yeah.
say in your body, that's what I meant.
No, that's
Thank
okay
you for correcting
because
me.
there was a
Yeah.
recent study published. I don't know if it
Mhm.
was recent. I just remember recently hearing about it. But
Yeah.
what they said was that they had this experiment where they were there was some sort of environment they were in where there was like a treat, and then around the treat or in a certain area there was like a shock pad. And so every time the mice would get close to the treat, they would get shocked by the shock pad. And so what happened was it took some time before that mouse stopped actually going to the shock pad because they had learned that the shock pad's going to shock them. The offspring of that mouse also exhibited that same behavior without that same initial experimentation. So the point there
Mhm.
was that they saw how behavior is passed from one generation to another. And what they learned, I think, was that after 7 generations, that behavior starts to dissipate. And
Yes.
so, and I
Yep.
don't know if it was seven. I might have to get the actual
It
article.
used to be 5, and then I heard 7 recently that
Okay.
it's changed to that. Yeah. I don't know the article either, but it sounds accurate, especially from watching it play out and within my own family.
Mm, mhm. And that's
So,
and the point there is that with what we're saying about self-love and like having the tools to heal from trauma,
yeah.
like we don't even know everything about humanity yet to the degree
Yeah.
where we're like saying we're teaching kids, hey, this is how you avoid, holding on to trauma if something happens that you don't like to happen. You know what I mean? And it's like
Mhm.
we're not even there as a species yet. And so that gives
Right.
me hope that there is still time to uncover these things, but time is also very relative.
And I will say, we also heal it, and I'm healing my children.
That's right.
I'm teaching my kids, and I'm healing my mom because we're having these discussions. Her mom was the quote unquote almond mom. Like thin was in for her. So being in a bigger body was ridiculed by my family. But the irony is and we actually just uncovered this recently at a discussion my mom and I had. We realized the reason why my grandmother was this way, the fact that she wanted people to think that she had money because
Mm,
having money gives you a certain status. And so she would not feed her children as much and talk about how her children are so thin to remain in the status of wealth.
I see.
So, I just was like, that's insane. So
Yeah.
you are trying to say that I'm unhealthy, yet
Yeah.
you are the only reason why your children are thin is because of your unhealthy choices that you made.
Right.
So it's fascinating.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's the situation where people are trying to keep up with societal expectations, right?
Yes. Yep.
And keeping up with the Joneses or the Johnsons or whatever,
Mhm.
right? And generations before us, like that's what you did. You made sure that you were portraying your ability to move in society and not be a threat, which is
Mhm.
human. But when it comes to society saying, oh, this is beautiful, or that is dangerous, or you should buy this, like those things aren't universal. Those things could also be harmful. And we as humans need to understand that and have discernment about some of those messages.
Yeah, exactly. That's why asking ourselves questions,
Yeah.
asking that intuition that we all have that God gave
Yep.
to us. Does this fit with my body? Does this make me feel good?
Yeah.
And the more we start to question ourselves, the more things open up for us. And I think as society, if we continue on that path and have those conversations of talking to ourselves and asking ourselves what we need, and that's the other thing, like society tells us, I don't know how many times I've seen ads about you need to be thin, but does then equate to health? Not
Right.
necessarily.
Say that.
Like, and when I was at my thinnest, I was actually at my unhealthiest. I was a vegan and I was doing yoga all day long as much as I could. And I injured myself and I didn't realize I was like repeating this cycle of self inflicting pain because I was mad at myself because society says I should be looking different and I'm not looking the way society wants. So then I said, oh, you know what? I'm going to love myself. I'm going to love my body no matter what somebody thinks about me. And I ended up modeling and helping people in my own community see themselves and loving their bodies because I loved myself.
Yeah.
So the more of us that do that internal work, the more we can change because it, as cliche as it is, it starts with the person.
That's right.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah. Thank you for your perspective,
You're welcome.
Jessica. It's great. And I hope our listeners are enjoying it too.
Yeah.
The next question is, do you feel like you did enough to affect the election in the way you wanted to see it go?
No, we did talk about that. I think now that we've talked a little more, I feel a little less ashamed. It was my decision. But again, like moving forward, I know what changes I'm going to make within myself and continue to make. A lot of that's unknown, and
Yeah.
that's scary too.
Yeah. But just for folks who don't know Jessica as well as I do, one of the things she said was that you ask yourself those questions.
Yes.
But the context that she's speaking from is that you are like a divine, infinite being that truly does already have all the answers. It's just in this manifestation and all these competing powers and influences around us, we lose that connection with that truer part of ourselves that can navigate the complexities of life without harming, right?
Yeah.
And so when you get to a place where you are or connected with your inner being and you try to ask yourself questions and have a clear answer, right? And
Hmm.
so that's part of what you were saying that I don't know everybody totally understands. I
It's
understand that
true.
because I've done that work too. But the
Hmm.
point is that people should their first influence should be themselves, right?
Absolutely.
You know,
Yes. Instead of like seek internal validation, not
that's right.
external validation. Yes.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Okay. And that's a nugget that we're gonna hold on to because we're gonna come back to that in a future podcast. I
Love it.
so thank you for imparting that. The last question I have for you, Jessica, is what do you want to say to the version of yourself 4 years in the future?
I am proud of everything that you have done since the last 4 years because
Excellent.
I know that you've made gracious changes, not only in your own life, but in others.
Perfect. That's great. All right. And so, in conclusion of this podcast episode, I just want to sign off by saying we are all different, but we are all also the same. What
Yeah.
matters is we recognize that and move forward to make a better world for all of us. So, thank you
Yeah.
again, Jessica, for blessing us with your presence. And
You bet. Thank you for having me. This was healing. It really was. I appreciate it.
absolutely, that's good. I hope everybody gets a little bit of healing from this because that's what we need in this country. Because if we can't even look at our neighbors in the face without hating that, like, where are we destined to go as a country? And so we really need
Absolutely.
to overcome that.